I ran a trembling hand over the cover of my old journal, its pages filled with sketches, logos, and financial projections for Innovate Digital. It was more than just a business plan. It was the blueprint for the life I'd dreamed of building since I was 20. The memory of the day I discovered my dedicated startup savings account had been drained, the crisp, damning bank statement clutched in my hand, still felt like a physical blow. It was the same week my younger brother, Leo, had finally secured his spot in a prestigious, ridiculously expensive music conservatory, celebrated with a lavish family party where my own small design achievements went unmentioned. My name is Aria Vance, and my wedding to Daniel Sterling is just 3 weeks away. But the knot in my stomach isn't pre-wedding nerves. It's the coiled tension of a decade-long reckoning finally coming to a head. My fingers trace the faded lines on the journal page, a logo I'd designed, clean and modern. It represented everything I wanted: independence, creativity, building something from the ground up. Instead, I'd spent the last 8 years working a decent, soul-sucking job at a local marketing firm, paying off student loans I shouldn't have needed, and watching my parents pour money into the Vance printing press and its attached local paper, the Daily Chronicle, a business that felt increasingly like a relic of the past. "Arya, are you still lost in thought about the seating chart?" Daniel called from the kitchen, his voice warm, a comforting presence in the quiet apartment. He was making his famous lasagna, the smell of tomato sauce and basil a stark contrast to the bitter taste of memory in my mouth. "Just trying to figure out where to place everyone," I replied, closing the journal with a soft thud. The truth was, I was wrestling with the decision of whether to even invite my parents, or more accurately, how to ensure their presence would serve my purpose. Daniel appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His brow was furrowed with gentle concern. "You know, we could always just go to the courthouse. Get married on a beach somewhere, leave all the complications behind." I shook my head, the image of my parents' smiling faces in a forced family photo flashing in my mind. Me, always on the periphery. "No," I said, the word firmer than I intended. "They need to be there. They need to see this, all of it." The doorbell rang, a cheerful peal that cut through the tension. It was Sasha, my best friend since freshman year of college, armed with a bottle of sparkling wine and a knowing smirk. "All right, Bright-to-be," she announced, stepping inside. "Your code-red text means someone needs bubbly and a sympathetic ear. What fresh hell has Valerie Vance unleashed now?" I sighed, gesturing her in. Not exactly Valerie this time. At least, not directly. I walked over to my desk, picking up a heavy vellum envelope that had arrived that morning. The return address bore the elegant letterhead of Sterling and Associates, Aunt Clara Sterling's digital media conglomerate. Clara Sterling, Daniel's aunt, a force of nature in the tech world, and someone my parents rarely spoke of, usually with thinly veiled disapproval. "Okay, this is new," Sasha said, her eyes widening at the elegant envelope. "Aunt Clara, I thought she was practically mythical in the Vance household." "She's real," I confirmed. "And she wants to meet me. Coffee tomorrow morning. Says she has a business proposition." "Ooh, mysterious." Sasha leaned back on the couch, kicking off her shoes. "Your mom is going to lose her mind." "Mom and Dad are a little preoccupied with their own impending doom," I said, the bitterness seeping into my voice. "The printing press is bleeding money. They're pouring everything they have into trying to keep the Chronicle afloat, convinced it's just a temporary slump." I picked up the old journal again. $40,000 bleeding, to be exact. My $40,000. Sasha's expression sobered. "The startup money from Innovate Digital?" "Every last cent," I confirmed, tracing the outline of the logo. "Gone, a family investment in the printing press." That's what they called it when I finally cornered them about it years ago. Said it was critical to keep the business afloat, that I'd get it back with interest, someday. Daniel sat down beside me, taking my hand. "Show her the letter, Liv." He'd started calling me Liv when we first met, a nickname that stuck, signifying the part of me that felt alive and free. I took a deep breath, retrieving a faded, official-looking envelope from a locked drawer. "It's not just the money, Sash." I handed her the envelope. "I found this last week, tucked away in Arthur's messy desk at the printing press, like he'd just shoved it out of sight and forgotten about it." Sasha's eyes scanned the document. "The Harrison Foundation, Grant Award Notification, Aria Vance, Project, Innovate Digital, $100,000. She looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. Arya, this was a grant to fund your own agency, with mentorship from Stonebrook Digital, one of the top digital marketing firms in the country, I finished for her. 5 years ago, $100,000 to get Innovate Digital off the ground, cover operating costs for 2 years, provide resources and mentorship. It was everything I needed. My voice trembled slightly. They never told me. They kept it. Said Stonebrook wasn't stable enough, that pursuing my own agency was too risky. Pushed me into taking the job at the local marketing firm instead. Said it was a practical choice, a stable career path. Sasha was speechless. Arya, they didn't just take your money, they stole your future. Pretty much, I said, a dry ache in my chest. All those years I felt stuck, like I was swimming against a current, taking on extra freelance work just to feel creatively fulfilled. All because the opportunity I needed had been deliberately hidden from me. What are you going to do? Sasha asked, her voice quiet. I looked at the invitation from Aunt Clara, then back at the damning grant letter and the old journal. That's what tomorrow's coffee is about. Aunt Clara. She built her empire from nothing. Everyone in this town, especially my parents, saw her as a reckless anomaly, the black sheep who left. A small, grim smile touched my lips. Maybe she was just the only one brave enough to break free and build something real. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Don't forget the Rotary Club lunch tomorrow, Arya. Arthur is speaking about the importance of local news, and we need you there to show your support for the Chronicle. 7 years since I graduated, and I was still being paraded as a prop for their failing business. I just secured a national branding contract for a major client through my freelance work, a significant step, and when I told her, Mom just asked if I could design a new, urgent ad layout for the paper's subscription drive. Arya, Daniel said softly, his grip tightening on my hand. Whatever you're planning with Aunt Clara tomorrow, I'm with you, every step of the way. Sasha nodded, her eyes hard. Me too. It's long past time they saw you live. Really saw you. I walked to the window, looking out at the familiar, sleepy town. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, achieved enough success, maybe even took a more active role in the printing press as they'd always hinted, they'd finally acknowledge my worth, my own ambitions. But I knew now that they never would. Not unless I forced them to. The invitation in my hand felt like a key. Another text from Mom. Have you considered taking on more responsibilities at the printing press after the wedding? Valerie thinks you have a knack for layout. It's a secure future, dear. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new document on my laptop. Next to it, I placed the old Innovate Digital Journal, the Harrison Foundation grant letter, and the crumpled bank statement from 10 years ago showing the $40,000 withdrawal. Years of quiet resentment, of stifled dreams, of carefully hidden proof, all laid bare. Sasha, I said, turning to my best friend, my voice low and steady. You always said living your truth is the best revenge. She grinned, a slow, knowing smile spreading across her face. Ready to live it, then? I looked at Aunt Clara's invitation again. Tomorrow, I would start planning a different kind of future, one that wouldn't just shock my parents. It would dismantle the carefully constructed reality they'd built for me, brick by brick. Are you absolutely sure about this? Daniel's question was quiet, but filled with understanding. I leaned back into his embrace, watching our reflection in the darkened window. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. As if on cue, my phone lit up with one final text from Mom. Remember, family always comes first, Arya. I smiled, but it was a cold, hard smile. Oh, Mom, I whispered to the empty room, you have no idea how right you are. The coffee shop Aunt Clara had chosen was a stark contrast to the vintage tea room my mother favored. Modern, airy, with minimalist decor and the hum of quiet conversations and soft jazz. I arrived 15 minutes early, my heart pounding, but she was already there, sipping a latte, looking every bit the successful, independent woman I'd only ever seen glimpses of at distant family gatherings. Arya, she said, standing, her smile genuine and warm, it's good to finally meet you properly. She studied me for a moment as I sat down. You have your mother's eyes, but the rest. There's a spark there I haven't seen in the Vance line for a long time, something entirely your own. Aunt Clara wore a sharp, tailored suit, her silver hair styled in a chic, modern cut. She looked powerful, confident, Everything my parents had subtly implied she wasn't too ambitious, too independent, not family-oriented enough. I have to admit, I said, my voice slightly nervous, I was very surprised to get your invitation, Aunt Clara. She smiled, a knowing glint in her eye, and slid a sleek tablet across the table. I've been following your work, Arya. Your freelance design portfolio is exceptional. The branding you did for Green Cycle Solutions, brilliant. Clean, impactful, exactly the kind of visual communication that cuts through the noise in the digital space. My jaw dropped slightly. You know about that? I know about all of it, she said, taking another sip of her latte. Your awards in college, your consistent, high-quality freelance work while holding down a less-than-inspiring day job, the way you've built a reputation despite obstacles, her expression became more serious. I also know about Innovate Digital and the Harrison Foundation grant. My breath hitched. How did she know? The grant. I sit on the board of several foundations, she explained. The Harrison Foundation is one of them. Your proposal stood out. When the acceptance wasn't acted upon, I made some inquiries. It wasn't difficult to trace the trail back to your parents. Valerie and Arthur always did have a talent for managing your lives, didn't they? Particularly when it benefited their own. The waiter arrived with my coffee, giving me a moment to compose myself. On the tablet, I saw articles about my freelance projects, mentions in design blogs, even screenshots of my old Innovate Digital pitch deck. The one I'd poured over in my journal. She had been watching, not just casually, but with intent. Why now? I asked, my voice quiet. Why reach out after all these years? Because I'm expanding Aurora Digital, Aunt Clara said, leaning forward slightly. We're launching a new division focused on disruptive branding and digital strategy for high-growth companies. And I need a lead designer with vision, with grit, with a portfolio that speaks for itself. Someone who isn't afraid to challenge the status quo, who understands building something from the ground up. She pulled out another document from her briefcase, an employment contract. I'm offering you the lead designer position. It comes with a generous salary, immediate stock options, and a clear path to partnership within 3 years. You'll be running your own team, leading major projects. My mind reeled. Aurora Digital was a powerhouse, exactly the kind of cutting-edge firm I had only ever dreamed of working for, let alone leading a division within. It was everything Innovate Digital was meant to be, but on a scale I couldn't have achieved alone. There's a catch, isn't there? I said, wary. Aunt Clara's expression hardened slightly. The catch is that Valerie and Arthur will see this as an act of war, a direct affront to their authority. They'll try to manipulate you, make you doubt yourself, tell you it's too unstable, that you're abandoning them when the printing press needs you most. They might even make a counteroffer, try to bribe you with a false sense of importance back home. They can't stop me, I said, feeling a surge of defiance, of power I hadn't felt in years. I'm not that compliant girl anymore. No, you're not, Aunt Clara agreed, pulling out one final document. This is a detailed breakdown of the $40,000 they took from your Innovate Digital seed money, with interest calculated to today's date. It comes to just over $51,200. She slid the paper across the table. And this is an estimate of the potential earning losses from the sabotaged $100,000 Harrison grant, accounting for project opportunities, client acquisition, and business growth over the last 5 years. It's a conservative estimate, based on industry averages. My eyes scanned the second document. The number listed took my breath away. It was over $300,000. They hadn't just taken $40,000 and hidden a $100,000 grant. They had potentially cost me hundreds of thousands in lost opportunity and future growth. This is more than just money, I whispered, the weight of it settling on me. It's a life, Aunt Clara said softly. The life you were meant to build. Maya, I'm not just offering you a job. I'm offering you the resources and the platform to finally build that life. And, she added, her eyes meeting mine, the leverage to reclaim what was stolen. The wedding. The plan, previously a vague, vengeful idea, solidified into sharp focus. They were expecting me to play the role of the dutiful daughter, walking down the aisle towards a stable future they approved of. Instead, they would receive a different kind of delivery. They'll get served legal papers, I said, my voice firm. A demand for repayment, for the $51,200, and I looked at the estimate of lost earnings. For the damages, the loss of opportunity. Aunt Clara's smile was sharp, almost predatory. Along with the announcement that you're not just working at Aurora Digital, you're a rising star on the partnership track, they'll be humiliated, publicly, disowned by their community potentially. She leaned back. Are you ready for that? For the fallout? For the bridges that will burn? I thought about all the family dinners where my achievements were dismissed, the constant pressure to prioritize the chronicle, the way Leo's artistic pursuits were indulged financially while mine were actively undermined. What about Leo? I asked, the thought of my brother a pang in my chest. He wasn't involved in the money, not directly. No, Aunt Clara said, but his conservatory tuition, his recording studio time, it all contributed to the financial strain on your parents. And they leveraged his dreams just as much as they suppressed yours to justify their actions. Sometimes, the people we love most are caught in the crossfire of someone else's decisions. That's the price of freedom, Arya. Are you willing to pay it? I pulled out my phone, showing her the latest text from Mom. Just confirming you'll be at the Rotary Club luncheon tomorrow, Arya. Arthur needs you there. Please don't disappoint us. They still see me as an extension of their business, I said, the words flat. A warm body to fill a seat and make them look good. How do we start? I asked, pushing the hesitation aside. Aunt Clara handed me the digital pen. Right now. But understand, Arya, once you sign this, there's no turning back easily. Your parents will see this as the ultimate betrayal. There will be consequences. Betrayal, I echoed, the word tasting like ash. Like draining my savings, like hiding a $100,000 grant, like trying to force me into a life I didn't want every chance they got. I signed the employment agreement, my hand steady, the pen gliding across the digital surface. Welcome to Aurora Digital, Arya, Aunt Clara said, gathering the documents. Now about this wedding. I assume you'll want to make a statement. Oh, it will be a statement, I said, a fierce, cold certainty settling over me. They're expecting a traditional, small-town bride. Instead, they'll get a notice of intent to sue served during the reception, right before the cake cutting. You understand this will burn every bridge, she repeated, her eyes searching mine. I thought about the photo albums at home, the pictures where I was always slightly out of focus, on the edge of the frame, eclipsed by Leo or the family business. Some bridges, I said, the words a quiet promise to myself, deserve to burn. As we left the coffee shop, the city noise seemed louder, sharper. Aunt Clara placed a hand on my arm. Get ready, Arya. The truth is a powerful thing, and not everyone is prepared for its impact. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose that went beyond just building a career. I was building something bigger. I was building my life. Another text from Mom beeped on my phone as I got into my car. Confirmation needed for Rotary lunch. Please respond. Arthur is expecting you. I didn't reply. The expectation was a cage I was finally breaking free from. Are you absolutely certain about this, Liv? Daniel's question came later that night as we sat on the couch, the remnants of his lasagna forgotten on the coffee table. The signed contract sat on the table between us, a silent testament to the seismic shift underway. I leaned into his embrace, watching the city lights through the window. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. My phone lit up with one final text from Mom. Remember, family always comes first, Arya. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It was the smile of someone who understood the true cost of that phrase. Oh, Mom, I whispered. You have no idea how right you are. My new office at Aurora Digital was everything my old cubicle wasn't. Spacious, filled with natural light, overlooking the bustling city. 6 months into my role as lead designer, I felt like I was finally breathing. I was challenged, respected, and building a portfolio I was genuinely proud of. By optimizing the visual hierarchy here, I explained to a client, pointing to a complex digital layout on the large screen, we can guide the user's eye more effectively, improving navigation and increasing engagement by an estimated 20%. Impressive work, Arya, Mr. Davison, the client, said, nodding approvingly. Your team is exceeding our expectations. After the client left, Aunt Clara walked into my office. Excellent presentation, Arya. You have a real talent for translating complex ideas into compelling visuals. Thanks, Aunt Clara, I smiled. It helps when you actually believe in the product you're designing for. I was about to ask about the final details for the legal documents when the intercom buzzed. Miss Vance, your brother, Leo, is here to see you. My heart did a strange flip. Leo, we hadn't spoken much since I moved to the city. Our conversations were strained, filled with polite questions about my job and vague answers about his music. Send him in, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Aunt Clara gave my shoulder a discreet squeeze before leaving. Leo walked in, looking small and out of place in my large office, wearing a faded band t-shirt and jeans, his guitar case slung over his shoulder. Hey sis, he said, looking around with wide eyes. Wow, this is impressive, really impressive. Hey Leo, I said, standing up, what are you doing here? He sat down in the chair opposite my desk, fidgeting with his hands. Mom and Dad don't know I'm here, he admitted, avoiding my gaze. Said I had a last-minute rehearsal. Of course, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. What's going on, Leo? He hesitated. I saw the article about you. In the business section online, about you being lead designer here, and the talk about partnership. He looked up, his expression troubled. Arya, do you really know what you're doing? You mean pursuing a career I'm passionate about? Building something meaningful at a company that values my work? Or are you worried I'm not back in Harmony Falls, designing flyers for the Chronicle like Mom wanted? That's not fair. His face flushed slightly. I never asked them to. To pay for everything. No, I said, the old hurt bubbling up. You just accepted it, my everything. I gestured to my desk. You knew about Innovate Digital, Leo. You knew I was saving to start my own agency. That $40,000. It was gone right when your conservatory tuition was due. Did you ever wonder about that? He fell silent, staring at the cityscape outside my window. They just said the printing press needed a loan, a temporary one, and that it would help make sure I had everything I needed for the conservatory, that they didn't want me to struggle like they had. A temporary loan, I scoffed. And what about the grant, Leo? The $100,000 Harrison Foundation grant I won? The one that would have funded my agency and given me mentorship from a top firm. Did you know they hid that from me? That they deliberately sabotaged a life-changing opportunity? His head shot up, his eyes wide with genuine shock. The grant? No, Arya, I swear to God, I didn't know about any grant. They just said that firm wasn't legit. That it was too risky for me to go off on my own like that. That working locally was safer. And you believed them, I stood up, walking to the window. Did you ever question them, Leo? Ever wonder why things felt unbalanced? I'm asking now, he said, his voice tight with emotion. He came to stand beside me, looking out at the city. What exactly are you planning, Arya? Mom's been calling me nonstop, saying you're pulling away, that you're acting like a stranger. She says you won't let her help with the wedding details. I laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. Help? You mean control? Did she tell you she tried to change my wedding venue last week? Or that she's been calling my caterer and florist behind my back, trying to force traditional choices? She wants everything to be perfect, he mumbled. Stop defending them, Leo. I spun around, the years of frustration boiling over. Just once, whose side are you on? He stepped back, startled by my outburst. There shouldn't be sides in a family, Arya. There have always been sides, I said, my voice trembling with anger. I was just too desperate for their approval, too blind to see it until now. I walked back to my desk, pulling up a digital rendering of a new branding project I was working on. Look at this, Leo, really look. This is who I am, what I was meant to do, not lay out flyers for a dying business, not be the practical, obedient daughter they wanted. Leo studied the design on the screen, his expression shifting from apprehension to something else, recognition, perhaps even admiration. This is incredible, Arya. Wow, he looked at me. But Aunt Clara, you know what working for her will do to Mom and Dad, how they feel about her. Because she saw me, I said, my voice softer now, really saw me. When was the last time they actually saw either of us, Leo? Not as extensions of the printing press or their idea of success, but as people. He sank back into the chair, looking weary, defeated. The conservatory, the music. It's not what I thought it would be, not like this. He gestured vaguely. There's so much pressure, to be the next big thing, to make all their investment pay off. Their money, I said quietly. And mine. Maybe, he stood up, heading for the door, the weight of his guitar case seeming heavier than before. Just, whatever you're planning for the wedding, Arya, be careful. They're talking about intervening, about doing something to save you from yourself. Leo, I called as he reached the door. When it happens, at the wedding, remember this conversation. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. When what happens? You'll see, I said. Tell Mom, tell her the seating chart is finalized and Aunt Clara is at the head table. After he left, Aunt Clara returned. Everything all right. I pulled out the legal documents from my locked desk drawer. The demand for repayment of $51,200 and the notice of intent to sue for damages related to the sabotaged grant opportunity. He suspects something, I said, but he won't warn them, not really. How can you be so sure? Because for the first time, I said, placing the documents on my desk, I saw my brother, not just the golden child they pushed into a mold. He's as trapped as I was, maybe more. I added a final flourish to my signature on one of the forms. My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. Wedding planner just called. Your mom tried to switch our modern jazz quartet to a terrible, outdated wedding band. I smiled, typing back, tell her the quartet is non-negotiable. 2 weeks until showtime. Aunt Clara picked up the legal documents, checking the signatures. You know, Arya, even now, there's still time to reconsider. We could find another way, a less public way. I looked around my office. At the vibrant designs on the walls, the awards I'd won through sheer grit and determination, my name on the door. Everything I'd built despite their limitations, not because of their help. No, I said firmly. They made their choice 10 years ago when they stole my future and 5 years ago when they buried my opportunity. Now I'm making mine. And they need to understand the consequences. The sun began to set over the city, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. In 2 weeks, I would walk down the aisle, not as the daughter they had planned, but as myself, finally, unapologetically. And the life they had buried? It was about to bloom. They're here, Sasha whispered, nudging me discreetly as my parents walked into the upscale restaurant. It was 1 week before the wedding, and they'd insisted on hosting a rehearsal dinner preview with just the immediate family, a last-ditch attempt, I suspected, to assert control. Mom, Valerie Vance, clutched her ubiquitous wedding planning binder like a shield, her smile a little too wide, a little too fixed. Arya, darling, Mom air-kissed my cheek, her voice dripping with a sweetness I knew was performative. We have so much to discuss. The church coordinator called again about the floral arrangements. She seemed confused about the lack of traditional lilies. The florist has my final approval, Mom, I interrupted gently but firmly, signaling the waiter for a bottle of champagne, not the white wine Mom preferred. Everything is finalized. Dad, Arthur Vance, settled into his chair, his gaze resting disapprovingly on Daniel. Still time to reconsider the prenuptial agreement, son, he said gruffly. Family assets need to be protected, especially with fluctuating market conditions. He was clearly referencing the struggles of the printing press, a constant source of anxiety and cryptic comments. Actually, Arthur, Daniel replied smoothly, squeezing my hand under the table, all our legal matters have been thoroughly reviewed and finalized. Without consulting us, Mom's voice rose an octave, her fixed smile faltering. Arya, Daniel, that's not how these things are done in this family. There are expectations, traditions. The waiter arrived with the champagne, the pop of the cork a small, defiant punctuation mark. I watched Mom flip through her binder, her brows furrowed. Now about the seating chart, she continued, her voice regaining some of its forced cheerfulness. I've placed Aunt Clara's table, well, towards the back. Away from the main family, we don't want any unconventional disruptions. Aunt Clara is seated at the head table, I stated clearly, meeting her gaze. She's my boss, my mentor, and my matron of honor. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's grip on his water glass tightened, his knuckles turning white. Boss, he repeated, leaning forward, his voice low and dangerous. What exactly does that mean, Arya? It means I am the lead designer at Aurora Digital, I said, my voice steady, unwavering. And I am on track to become a partner in the firm. Mom's binder slipped from her hands, scattering papers across the immaculate tablecloth. Aurora Digital? That online nonsense. That woman has poisoned your mind. First that ridiculous startup idea, then this. When will you stop chasing these impractical fantasies and focus on something stable? Something real like the printing press. Real? I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You mean like a business that's drowning in debt? Or perhaps you'd prefer I just stayed home and managed your social media accounts? Arya, Daniel warned softly beside me. Did you know? I continued, ignoring him, the words tumbling out, fueled by years of suppressed frustration, that Leo came to see me at my office last week. He told me something rather interesting about his music career. Leave your brother out of this, Arya, Dad snapped, his face darkening. Why? I challenged, my voice rising slightly. Because he might tell me how miserable he is. How he never wanted the pressure of being your rock star. How he just wanted to write. Mom's face paled. That's not true. Leo loves music. We invested everything in his talent. My everything, I corrected, my voice hardening. My startup money. The grant opportunity you hid from me. You took what was mine to fund his dreams and prop up your failing business. We did what was best for the family. Dad insisted, his voice booming slightly. Someone had to be grounded, practical. Daniel stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need some air, Arya. He looked at me, his eyes full of understanding. I nodded, standing as well. Excuse us. Please feel free to review the finalized seating chart and menu while we're gone. I walked past my stunned parents, joining Daniel as he headed for the patio. The cool night air was a welcome relief against my flushed cheeks. The city lights twinkled below, a symbol of the vibrant, growing world I was now a part of, so different from the insular world of Harmony Falls. You okay, Liv? Daniel asked, pulling me into a hug. They still don't see it, I murmured, pressing my face into his shoulder. They still think they were justified, that they did nothing wrong. Are you having second thoughts? He asked, his voice low. About the wedding plan. I pulled back, looking up at him. No, never about that, but I'm scared, Daniel. What if this just shatters everything? Beyond repair. Some things need to be shattered to be rebuilt properly, he said, his gaze steady. Like those old buildings you renovate. Sometimes the foundation is too rotten to save. Through the restaurant window, I could see Mom frantically gathering her scattered papers, her mouth moving rapidly, likely listing everything I was doing wrong. Dad was on his phone, probably calling Leo, demanding explanations. They're going to be blindsided, I whispered, a sense of inevitability washing over me. Good, Daniel said, his voice firm. Maybe that's exactly what they need. Sasha appeared at the patio door, her eyes sparkling with a mix of concern and anticipation. Your mom is back at the table, reorganizing the seating chart again and talking about adding a solo performance by her cousin Edna on the dulcimer. Want me to run interference? I shook my head, a ghost of a smile touching my lips. Let her try. The event planner has strict instructions. Only Daniel and I can make changes. Smart girl, Sasha grinned. Oh, and Aunt Clara just texted. The final legal documents were delivered to Ethan's cousin this afternoon. My stomach clenched, a mixture of dread and anticipation. 1 week. In 1 week, everything would change. We returned to the table to find Mom deeply engrossed in conversation with Dad, her voice lowered, but the tension in the air was palpable. Now, about your dress, darling, she began, turning back to me, her fixed smile back in place. The dress is perfect, Mom, I cut her off gently. Everything is exactly as I want it, from the flowers to the music to the seating chart, but the traditions, the ones you keep pushing, they're not mine. I gathered my purse, signaling to Daniel that it was time to go. Daniel and I have an early flight for a client meeting tomorrow. Thanks for dinner. Dad stood up, his face grim. Arya, wait. Whatever Clara Sterling has promised you, whatever she's filled your head with, she's manipulating you, just like she always has. She's always been trouble. I turned back to them, feeling an odd sense of calm settle over me. The fear was still there, but it was overlaid with a quiet certainty. No, Dad, I said. That's what you and Mom did. You manipulated us, you controlled us, you tried to mold us into what you wanted us to be. Aunt Clara just showed me the truth. The truth, Mom scoffed, her voice rising again. The truth is you're throwing away everything we've built for you, the security, the legacy. No, I said softly, meeting their eyes. I'm building something of my own, a legacy that is authentic, for the first time in my life. As Daniel and I walked away, leaving them standing there amidst the scattered papers and the unfinished meal, I could hear Mom already on her phone, her voice tight with frustration. Some habits die hard. 1 week, Daniel said as we drove away from the restaurant, the lights of Harmony Falls fading behind us. 1 week, I agreed, my fingers tracing the outline of the folder holding the legal documents in my bag. $200 for the stolen startup money, plus damages for the lost grant opportunity. And the truth. Then they'll finally understand what it feels like to have everything taken away, to have your future decided for you. The city lights of our new home grew brighter on the horizon, a beacon of the life I was building. I thought about foundations, the crumbling ones my parents clung to, built on lies and control, and the new ones I was laying down, built on honesty and self-reliance. Some things really do need to shatter before they can be rebuilt, and I was ready to swing the wrecking ball. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Arya?" Ethan's cousin, the lawyer, asked, sliding the final set of documents across the polished table in his office. 3 days until the wedding, and my hand trembled slightly as I signed the last page. "I'm sure, Ethan," I said, handing him the special envelope I had prepared for my parents. It contained the formal demand for repayment and the notice of intent to sue. "This needs to be delivered exactly as we discussed, during the reception, after the first dance." He nodded, tucking the envelope carefully into his briefcase. "Understood. Miss Sterling has arranged for discreet security personnel, just in case of any unforeseen reactions." Just then, my phone buzzed. Leo calling. I'd been avoiding his calls since our conversation at my office, knowing he was likely caught in the crossfire of my parents' distress. But something compelled me to answer. "Arya, we need to talk, now." His voice was urgent, strained. I stepped out of the lawyer's office into the quiet hallway. "Leo, what's wrong?" "Mom's planning something for the wedding," he said, his voice low, as if he was trying not to be overheard. "She's been making calls, talking about saving you. From Daniel, from Aunt Clara, from yourself. I overheard her telling Dad that she won't let you ruin your life like Aunt Clara did." My stomach dropped. They weren't just upset, they were actively plotting. "Did you hear anything specific?" I asked, my voice tight. "No, just. She's acting manic, like she's building up to something big." He paused. "Arya, whatever you're planning, they're ready for it, or at least they think they are. They're expecting you to try something." I leaned against the cool wall, closing my eyes for a moment. "Thanks for the warning, Leo. Are you ever going to tell me what's really going on?" he asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "You'll find out at the wedding," I said, the words feeling heavy and final. "Just remember what we talked about in my office, about seeing things clearly." After hanging up, I called Aunt Clara immediately. She answered on the first ring. "They're plotting something," I said, without preamble. "Of course they are," Aunt Clara sounded unsurprised. "Valerie never could handle losing control, especially not publicly. What did Leo say?" I quickly recounted the conversation. She mused. "They're expecting a confrontation, but likely during the reception. They'll be prepared then, composed, ready to counter whatever you do. We need to adjust the timeline." "Adjust? Move everything up," she said. "The documents need to be delivered during the ceremony, not the reception." "During the ceremony?" I stared down the long hallway. That's incredibly public, dramatic." "Precisely," Aunt Clara said. "They're expecting the drama later when they can manage it. Doing it during the ceremony? It catches them completely off guard. Maximum impact, minimum time for them to recover their composure." The door to Ethan's cousin's office opened, and Sasha rushed out, looking breathless. "Arya, you need to see this." She thrust her phone into my hand. It was a social media post from Mom. A picture of her and Dad, looking concerned but resolute. The caption read, "So blessed to be preparing for our daughter Arya's traditional, God-centered wedding, guiding her back to the path of righteousness and family values. Our precious girl, lost for a while, but soon to be found. Family first #harmony falls tradition prodigal daughter returns." I scrolled through the comments below. They were filled with sympathetic messages from the Harmony Falls community, friends of my parents, lamenting how easy it was for young people to be led astray by city influences and unconventional lifestyles. "She's making it sound like I'm some lost soul being saved," I said, a cold rage building in my chest. "Classic Valerie," Aunt Clara muttered. "She's setting the narrative. When you make your move, she'll play the heartbroken mother, the pillar of the community, trying to save her misguided daughter from a terrible mistake." Sasha sat down next to me, her face grim. "There's more. She's been calling everyone she knows, inviting every conservative family friend, every pillar of the Harmony Falls community she can think of. The guest list has grown by almost 50 people in the last week. She's building an audience, I realized. Stacking the deck with people who will take her side, no matter what. Aunt Clara pulled out her phone. Time to fight fire with fire. I'm calling Ethan's cousin. The documents will be delivered right after you say, I do. They want a spectacle. We'll give them a spectacle they'll never forget. Won't that ruin the ceremony? Sasha asked, looking hesitant. I laughed, a dry, mirthless sound. The ceremony? You mean the traditional spectacle they've already turned my wedding into? Let it burn, Sasha. Let it all burn. My phone buzzed again, Mom. Darling, we've invited Reverend Miller to dinner tonight. He has concerns about some of the less traditional elements of your ceremony choices. Please be there. We only want what's best for you. What's best for me? I showed them the message. They've had 29 years to show me what's best for me. Now it's my turn. Aunt Clara nodded, a look of approval in her eyes. The student becomes the master. I'm not going to dinner, I decided. Let them sit there with their reverend and plot. Let them think they're in control. They have no idea what's coming. Sasha hugged me tightly. Want me to come over tonight? We can do final dress alterations and drink some very strong wine. Actually, I said, a new thought forming, I need to write something. I walked back into Ethan's cousin's office and sat down at his desk, pulling out my laptop. The legal documents were one thing, but they told only part of the story. They needed to hear the truth, the whole truth, in my own words. A letter, Aunt Clara said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Your own narrative. My own narrative, I agreed, beginning to type. Every hidden bank statement, every discarded business plan, every intercepted letter, every stifled dream, every stolen dollar, the $40,000, the $100,000 grant, the years of struggle, the pressure on Leo, the truth about the printing press. They wanted to talk about paths? Fine. Let's talk about the path they forced me down and the one I was choosing for myself, right here, right now. For the next hour, the words flowed, years of suppressed pain and anger finally finding their voice. Aunt Clara and Sasha handled calls, finalizing the new timeline with the lawyer and the event staff. As the sun began to set, I printed the final version. 3 copies. One for Mom, one for Dad, and one to be read aloud at the ceremony. Arya, Aunt Clara said softly, reading over my shoulder, her expression somber. This will shatter them. No, I corrected, sealing the envelopes, my hands steady now. They shattered themselves. The moment they decided their daughter was a possession to be controlled, a resource to be exploited, rather than a person to be loved and supported. My phone lit up with another message from Mom. We are waiting. Reverend Miller is here. Please do not embarrass us again. I turned off my phone and stood up, gathering my things. 3 days until the wedding. 3 days until the truth exploded in their faces. Let them wait, I said, a sense of quiet power settling over me. They've made me wait my entire life. You look absolutely stunning, Arya, Sasha whispered, adjusting the delicate veil over my hair. My dress, a sleek, modern design in sustainable silk, felt like a second skin, a perfect representation of who I was. It was nothing like the elaborate, traditional gown Mom had tried to force on me. Through the closed chapel doors, I could hear the growing murmur of the arriving guests. Mom's voice, distinct and carrying, rose above the others, playing her role as the proud, traditional mother of the bride. Oh yes, we're so thrilled. Everything is going according to our plans. Such a blessing. Places everyone. The wedding coordinator's voice was sharp, cutting through the pre-ceremony buzz. 5 minutes. Aunt Clara appeared beside me, resplendent in her elegant silver gown, chosen specifically to contrast with the muted pastels Mom favored. She wasn't just my matron of honor, she was my co-conspirator, my champion. Ethan's cousin is in position, she confirmed quietly, discreetly blended in near the front pew. Your parents still have no idea he's here. My hands trembled slightly as I smoothed my dress, a nervous energy coursing through me. Did you see their faces when you walked in with me? I asked, a flicker of grim amusement in my voice. Valerie nearly fainted, Aunt Clara smirked. Arthur is still trying to convince anyone who will listen that I crashed the wedding. Sasha peeked through the crack in the doors. Full house. Mom really did invite every single person from the Ladies' Auxiliary and the Chamber of Commerce. It's a who's who of Harmony Falls conservatism. Perfect, I took a deep breath, centering myself. The bigger the audience, the better the impact. The music started, not the traditional wedding march Mom insisted on, but a modern string quartet arrangement of a song Daniel and I loved. It was beautiful, unexpected, and entirely ours. Dad appeared at the door, his face a mask of barely concealed disapproval. He wore the same suit he wore for every important family event, a symbol of unchanging tradition. "Last chance, Arya," he muttered, taking my arm in his stiff grip. "We can still stop this nonsense. This isn't you." "You're right, Dad," I said, meeting his eyes, my voice clear and steady. "The nonsense stops today, and this is exactly who I am." The chapel doors swung open. The light streamed in, momentarily blinding me. Then I saw Daniel standing at the altar, his face soft with love and anticipation, a genuine, uncomplicated smile that was like a lifeline. Mom sat in the front row, beaming, her smile fixed and camera-ready, her ubiquitous binder clutched in her lap. Even now, Leo was beside her, looking utterly miserable in a suit that was clearly too tight, his gaze fixed on the floor. As Dad and I began the slow walk down the aisle, I could hear the hushed whispers from the pews. "Oh, she's so thin, such a modern dress. Valerie must be heartbroken. Finally settling down, thank goodness. Giving up that city nonsense." Dad handed me off to Daniel with a stiff nod, his hand lingering on my arm for a moment longer than necessary, a last attempt at possessiveness. The officiant began his opening remarks, his voice calm and resonant, speaking of love and commitment, but I barely heard him. My focus was on Ethan's cousin, the lawyer, who was slipping quietly, almost imperceptibly, into a pew near the front. Aunt Clara met my eyes from her place beside me, a silent nod passing between us. "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony," the officiant's voice cut through my thoughts. Mom shifted in her seat, and I saw her hand twitch towards her binder, towards the carefully prepared objections she likely had listed, the disruptions she had planned. This was it, her moment to seize control. Speak now or forever hold your peace. The silence in the chapel stretched for one beat, too, Mom's hand stilled, her mouth slightly open. Then, by the power vested in me, the officiant continued. Daniel squeezed my hands, a firm, reassuring pressure. The signal. "I do," I said, my voice clear and strong, resonating through the silent chapel. "I do," Daniel echoed, his voice filled with emotion. "And I now pronounce you husband and—" Actually, I turned to face the congregation, cutting off the officiant mid-sentence. The sudden shift in focus was palpable. Every eye was on me. Mom's fixed smile shattered, her mouth dropping open in shock. Dad started to stand, his face a mask of fury, but Aunt Clara moved to stand beside me, a silent, formidable presence. "Before we conclude this ceremony," I said, my voice steady, amplified by the chapel's acoustics, "I have something I need to say, a truth that needs to be shared." I unfolded the letter I held in my hand, the words a stark contrast to the traditional vows of moments before. "Many of you are here today," I began, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces in the pews, "because my mother invited you. She invited you to witness me, her prodigal daughter, return to the traditional path. She's right about one thing. Today is about making a choice about my life, but it's not the one she expected. It's about finally claiming the life that was stolen from me." Ethan's cousin, the lawyer, stepped forward, holding the envelopes, the demand for repayment and the notice of intent to sue. Mom stared at him, her face draining of color. "Arya," she whispered, her voice hoarse, a desperate plea. "Don't you dare." 10 years ago, I continued, my voice gaining strength, unwavering, my parents took $40,000 of the money I had saved, working double shifts through college, for my own tech startup, Innovate Digital. They called it a family investment in the struggling Vance printing press. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Leo looked up from the floor, his eyes wide, meeting mine for a brief, painful moment. 5 years ago, I went on, the words like stones dropping into the stunned silence, I was awarded a $100,000 grant from the prestigious Harrison Foundation to fund that startup, to provide mentorship and resources to launch my own business. My parents intercepted the grant notification. They hid it from me. They deliberately sabotaged that opportunity, claiming it was too risky, too unstable. They stole not just the $40,000, but the potential for a future they didn't approve of. The lawyer began distributing the envelopes, starting with the front row. Mom snatched hers, her hands shaking. Dad snatched his face turning a dangerous shade of red. Today, I finished, my voice ringing with a hard-won victory, I am not just marrying the love of my life. I am reclaiming what was stolen from me, every dollar, every lost opportunity, every buried dream. Mom ripped open her envelope, her eyes scanning the document. This is a legal demand for repayment. She shrieked, her voice cracking, the carefully constructed facade of the grieving mother crumbling completely. For the $51,200 owed, I confirmed, including interest. And yes, it includes a notice of intent to sue for damages related to the loss of opportunity from the sabotaged grant. A conservative estimate places that loss at over $300,000. You ungrateful selfish. Dad started to roar, surging forward, but Leo, his face pale but resolute, grabbed his arm, holding him back. That's not all. I turned slightly towards Aunt Clara, a sense of solidarity passing between us. I am also announcing my position as lead designer at Aurora Digital, Aunt Clara Sterling's firm, with a clear path to partnership. The firm my parents always dismissed as unstable and unconventional. The future they tried to prevent me from having. The whispers in the chapel turned into a roar of shocked murmurs. Mom stood up fully now, her face contorted with rage and disbelief. "You planned this," she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You did this deliberately. You turned our son against us. You've ruined everything." "No, Mom," I said, stepping down from the altar, facing her directly. "You ruined it. Every time you put the printing press before your children. Every time you dismissed my ambitions. Every time you lied to us, manipulated us, tried to force us into your perfect little box. You did this." "Security," Aunt Clara called softly, and the two discreet security personnel moved to stand at the ends of the aisle, their presence a silent, imposing barrier. "You're making a scene, Arya," Dad growled, struggling against Leo's grip. "No," Daniel said, stepping protectively in front of me, his voice calm but firm. "You made the scene, Arthur, for years. Now you get to watch your daughter choose her own path, openly and honestly." I turned back to the officiant who was standing there, looking utterly shell-shocked. "Please," I said, my voice steady, "continue with the ceremony." "Arya, please." Mom's voice broke, tears streaming down her face now, a performance for the shocked audience. "We can fix this, we can talk, we can." "No, Mom," I said, my voice quiet but final. "You can't fix this. Some things are broken beyond repair, but you can pay for it." I faced Daniel again, taking his hands. "Shall we finish getting married?" The officiant, regaining his composure, cleared his throat. "By the power vested in me." As he pronounced us husband and wife, the words felt like a benediction, a release. I heard Mom collapse back into her seat, her sobs echoing in the stunned silence. Dad was still wrestling with Leo, his face purple with rage, staring at the legal documents. But for the first time in my life, their reactions held no power over me. I kissed Daniel, a long, deep kiss that sealed not just our marriage, but my freedom. Surrounded by the shocked silence, the discreet presence of security, and the unwavering support of Daniel, Sasha, and Aunt Clara, I knew the war was over. And I had won. The reception hall buzzed with a nervous energy, a strange mix of stunned silence and forced conversation. Half the guests huddled in hushed, scandalized groups around my parents, their faces a mix of sympathy and horrified fascination. The other half cautiously approached Daniel and me near the cake, offering whispered congratulations and awkward smiles. "Arya," Leo's voice was quiet, coming from behind me. He looked pale, shaken, but his eyes met mine with a new, fragile honesty. We need to talk, now." I nodded, and together we walked to a relatively quiet corner of the hall, away from the main clusters of guests. Daniel gave my hand a reassuring squeeze before I went, his gaze following us. "Are you okay, Leo?" I asked, looking at my younger brother. He seemed older now, the weight of the day settling heavily on his shoulders. "Okay," he ran a hand through his messy hair. I didn't know, Arya, about the grant, about the money. Not like that. Not that it was all of it." "I know," I said softly. "They were very good at keeping secrets." "But I knew something was wrong," he admitted, his voice low. "The way they pushed the conservatory, the constant pressure to succeed, to make their investment worthwhile. I thought it was just them being typical parents, wanting me to have a secure future. It was their future they were trying to secure," I said, "using our lives as collateral. Look," he lowered his voice further, leaning against the wall. "There's something else you need to know, something I found. He pulled out his phone, his fingers fumbling slightly as he brought up a document. Last year, things were really bad with the printing press finances. Like, critically bad. They didn't just use your $40,000 and some of my music funds to keep it afloat. He showed me a scanned image, a ledger, tucked away in a hidden compartment in Arthur's desk at the printing press office. My eyes scanned the columns of numbers, the cryptic entries. What is this? It's a separate ledger, Leo explained, from the printing press accounts. I found it when I was helping Mom organize things a few months ago. They were transferring money out of the business, significant amounts, not for printing press expenses. My stomach clenched. Where was it going? He hesitated, looking deeply uncomfortable. To cover personal expenses, big ones, Dad's poker debts, and some really bad real estate investments he made years ago. He'd been quietly bleeding the business dry, trying to cover his tracks, using whatever liquid assets they could get their hands on, including your startup money, and probably some of the funds meant for my conservatory and recording time. The air felt suddenly thin. They didn't just take my money and hide an opportunity out of misguided parental control or a desperate attempt to save the family business. They did it to cover up Arthur's financial recklessness, his gambling, his failed ventures. The printing press wasn't just struggling, it was being cannibalized from within. That's why, I murmured, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening finality. That's why they were so desperate for control. To keep us close. To keep us from digging too deep. To keep the truth buried. If the full extent of Arthur's financial mismanagement came out, tied to the printing press, it could have legal repercussions far beyond a personal loan. Just then, Arthur Vance, his face a mask of fury and humiliation, stormed towards us, Valerie trailing behind him, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, putting on a show for anyone still watching. "You've had your little performance, Arya," Dad snarled, his voice low and menacing. "Now it's time to end this." "End what?" I challenged, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "The truth coming out, or what, Dad? You'll expose your own financial fraud, tell everyone about the poker debts, about where my money and maybe even Leo's really went." Dad's face went slack, draining of color. He looked at Leo, then back at me, a flicker of fear replacing the rage in his eyes. "What? What are you talking about?" "The ledger, Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the tense air. "The personal expenses. The money siphoned from the printing press. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That Leo wouldn't find out? You told her." Dad turned on Leo, his voice a furious whisper, laced with betrayal. "After everything we did for you, the conservatory, the recording time, everything you did for me," Leo laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You mean everything you forced me to do? Everything you stole from Arya to cover your own mistakes, to keep your secrets?" Aunt Clara appeared at my side, her presence a silent, powerful support. "Is there a problem here, Arthur?" "Stay out of this, Clara," Dad snapped, his focus shifting to her. "You've caused enough damage, always interfering." "Actually," I said, stepping slightly forward, meeting Dad's furious gaze, "Aunt Clara is the only one in this family who ever helped me build something real instead of tearing it down or stealing from me. Unlike my loving parents, who used my hard-earned savings and a life-changing opportunity to cover illegal gambling debts and failed investments." The nearby guests fell silent, their pretense of not listening completely abandoned. Mom hurried over, her performance faltering, raw panic in her eyes. "Arya, please," she begged, grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "We can discuss this privately, as a family." "Family?" I gestured around the hushed hall at the staring faces. "You mean the audience you gathered, the people you invited to watch me return to the path? Well, they're here now. Let them hear everything." "You wouldn't," Dad threatened, taking a step towards me. "Try me," I said, my voice unwavering. I turned to address the watching crowd, my voice carrying clearly. "Would anyone here like to hear about how the pillars of our community, Arthur and Valerie Vance, committed financial fraud using their family business? Or how they manipulated and blackmailed their own son to keep him in a career he hates, all to cover up their own debts and mistakes?" "Stop it, Arya," Mom shrieked, clinging to my arm. "Think about what you're doing to this family." "Let go of her, Valerie." Daniel's voice was calm but held an iron resolve as he gently but firmly separated Mom from me. "The only thing Arya is doing is telling the truth. Leo stepped forward, standing tall beside me and Daniel. And she's not alone anymore. The silence that followed was absolute. Dad looked from me to Leo, then to Daniel and Aunt Clara beside me, the dawning realization in his eyes that he had lost. Lost control of his children, lost the narrative, lost the power he had wielded for so long. "You have 48 hours," I said quietly, my voice low but carrying the weight of years of suppressed fury and a hard-won victory. "Either you arrange the full repayment of the $51,200, as outlined in the legal demand served today, or I will file charges for financial fraud and misappropriation of funds. Your choice. You would send your own father to jail," Mom whispered, her theatrical tears now real, her voice broken. "You would steal your own daughter's future," I countered, my gaze steady. Aunt Clara cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the tension. "I believe the bride and groom have a first dance scheduled. Shall we give them the floor?" The guests parted, creating a wide path to the dance floor. As Daniel led me forward, away from the tableau of my shattered family, I looked back once. Mom was weeping openly, clinging to Dad, who stood frozen, the legal papers still in his hand. Leo stood a few feet away, watching them, his face etched with pain, but also a strange sense of relief. Aunt Clara stood beside him, a hand on his shoulder, a silent promise of support. "You okay, Liv?" Daniel whispered as we began to dance, the music a soft, hopeful melody. "I think so," I said, leaning into him, the tension in my shoulders slowly easing. I looked at Leo, standing with Aunt Clara, both of them watching my parents with clear, steady eyes. Sometimes the truth hurts more than the lies, but at least it's real. And now we build something new. I smiled up at him, a genuine, unrestrained smile. Something honest together. The music played on, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly whole. Not because I had won some battle, but because I had finally claimed myself. The truth was out, the past was laid bare, and the future stretched before me, unwritten and entirely my own. The certified check for $51,200 landed on my desk with a soft thud a few days later. I stared at the amount, the numbers representing not just money, but years of struggle, of resentment, of suppressed potential. Mom stood across from me in my office at Aurora Digital, her designer suit impeccable, her face a mask of carefully controlled emotion. "There," she said, her voice tight. "It's done. Are you satisfied?" "This was never about satisfaction, Mom," I said, picking up the check, examining Arthur's signature. "It was about justice, and reclaiming what was mine." "Justice?" she scoffed, sinking into the chair opposite my desk. "You destroyed our family for justice?" "No, Mom," I said, gesturing around my spacious, light-filled office. "You destroyed our family for control. Look around. This is who I am, who I always was. If you just bothered to see it, maybe none of this would have happened. I see an ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family." "Who what?" I interrupted, my voice quiet but firm. "Who succeeded despite you? Who refused to be broken? Who demanded what was rightfully hers?" A soft knock at the door saved her from responding. Leo entered, looking much more relaxed than I had seen him in years, carrying a sturdy cardboard box. "Found these in Dad's study," he said, placing the box on my desk. "Hidden in the back of a closet. All your old design portfolios from high school and college, the ones they said were lost in the move." Mom's carefully constructed composure finally crumbled. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. "Leo, not you too." "Yes, Mom," he said, sitting down beside her, a quiet strength in his voice. "Me too. I'm not going back to the conservatory. I'm applying to Columbia's MFA program for creative writing." He looked at me, a hopeful smile touching his lips. "Dad can't use the band's potential earnings as leverage anymore. Arya made sure of that." I pulled out the portfolios one by one, thick binders filled with sketches, finished projects, award certificates I didn't even know I'd won, tucked away alongside the papers. Proof of a talent and passion they had deliberately hidden and dismissed. "We did what we thought was best," Mom whispered, her voice muffled. "No," I met her eyes, her face streaked with tears. "You did what was easiest. Forcing us into your mold was easier than accepting who we really were. Easier than facing your own financial reality." She looked around my office again, at the vibrant art on the walls, at the awards on the shelves, at the busy team working outside. This time, I saw something different in her eyes, not just anger or regret, but a flicker of comprehension. Now we move forward, I said. Separately, I can't fix this, Mom. The trust is broken. Can I? She asked, looking lost. You can try to learn from it, I said. I picked up one of the old portfolios, a comprehensive branding project I'd done in college. Start by really looking at who your children are, Mom, not who you wanted us to be, not who you needed us to be for the printing press. The door opened again, and Aunt Clara entered, followed by Daniel. The Weston contract is signed, Carol announced, then paused, seeing Mom and Leo. Oh, I can come back later. No, stay, I said. Mom was just leaving. Mom rose slowly, still clutching the old portfolio I'd handed her. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Your father. He won't accept this, Arya, she said, gesturing vaguely around the office. Any of it. He's furious about the money, and about Leo. I know, I said, walking her to the door. But for the first time in my life, Mom. That doesn't matter. After she left, Leo pulled out a worn paperback from his backpack. Think it's too late to become a published author? It's never too late to become yourself, Leo, Aunt Clara said, stepping forward and placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind, and I leaned back into his embrace, watching Leo and Aunt Clara animatedly discuss MFA programs, writing workshops, and literary agents. This was my family now. Chosen, not forced, built on honesty, support, and shared dreams. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. This is not over. You will regret this, Arya. I showed it to Daniel, who just shook his head. Still trying to intimidate you. Some habits die hard. I deleted the message without responding, but so do new dreams. Aunt Clara spread the signed Weston contract across my desk. It was a massive project, a complete digital overhaul for a major national corporation. My design, my strategy, my vision, my future. Ready to build something extraordinary, Arya? She asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I looked at the people around me, Daniel, my rock, Leo, finally finding his own path. Aunt Clara, the unlikely catalyst for it all. And my own reflection in the large window, finally seeing the woman who had emerged from the shadows of expectation and betrayal. Actually, I said, pulling out a fresh notebook, not a journal of buried dreams, but a notebook for drawing out new ones, I have an even better idea. I sketched quickly, the pen flying across the page. A building. A vibrant, modern space. A hub for creativity and collaboration. A place that would house Aurora Digital's design division, a writing workshop, a small gallery for local artists, a performance space for musicians. A place where dreams wouldn't be buried, but nurtured, celebrated, and brought to life. What do you think? I showed them the sketch. A place for people to become who they really are, to build their own legacies. Leo's eyes lit up. Can I run the writing program? Only if I get to design the entire space, I teased, a genuine smile on my face. Partners? He offered his hand, his smile matching mine. Partners, I agreed, shaking his hand. We both laughed, the sound light and free. The sun set over the city, casting long shadows through my office windows. Somewhere across town, Arthur and Valerie Vance were likely plotting, trying to regain a control they had never truly had. But here, in this space, surrounded by truth, possibility, and the people who saw and valued me, their power couldn't reach us anymore. We weren't just building buildings and businesses, we were building a future. To new beginnings, Daniel raised his coffee cup. No, I corrected, raising mine to meet his, Leo and Aunt Clara raising theirs alongside us. To being who we always were. Finally, we all drank to that, and I felt the last lingering weight of the past lift from my shoulders. The war was over. The truth was out. And the future was finally, completely, beautifully ours.